Okay. Oops. Not okay. Okay, well, let's make a start now that you can see me. So, making yourself comfortable in the chair. Weight a little bit forwards. Put your hips dropping back. So from the side, I exaggerate slightly. I go forward so I can feel some of my weight in my feet, but I don't want to be pulled forwards too much. This is counterbalanced by this feeling of sinking back. So I'm kind of held in that state. And we want to try and feel that sense of being held from in all directions, or left and right, and on the diagonals and so on. Just feeling that you're supported by your chair, of course, by your feet and legs. The back supports the front of your body. And this sense of something stronger within the body. I often start people off on that by sort of talking about our skeleton. It's a bit more subtle than that, because although your skeleton supports you from inside, it's also true that the soft tissue of the body supports the skeleton. It's a kind of two-way process. And really, most of these things in Tai Chi will work in both directions. So what we're looking for is a state that I would term equilibrium. The Chinese term is zhongding. That translates to central equilibrium. So rather than feeling that you have to somehow find a way of holding this posture, look for those elements of the posture that you feel are actually supporting you, are holding you. And then rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. The upper part of your chest. Your belly. And the legs. Now, sit back. And an essential component in that central equilibrium is going to be the rooting down. It's not a state that defies gravity. So the downward movement, the rooting down, is the one that creates the foundation. And it's this allowing of gravity to work through your body to pull you down. And if you do this in the chair and you say, are able to just release some of the tightness, some of the stiffness in your shoulders and your chest, you actually become a little bit more aware of the chair. You feel heavier in the chair. And actually, in sort of terms of what you could say, physics, there's a downward movement, which is the pull of gravity, but there's the counter movement, which is the resistance, the resilience of the chair, effectively creating the upward. And again, what we look for when we come to the upright positions again is an equilibrium, a balance between those two forces. So we're neither feeling crushed against the floor nor floating up towards the ceiling. And then So obviously we do that all the time. But the way that we do it is quite often by stiffening up, by straining our shoulders, our back, our chest, our hips, our legs, our knees, constantly in this fight with the pull of gravity. Whereas in Tai Chi, we try and release that tightness, release that stiffness, that resistance. I'm beginning to recognize that the two movements, the two directions are two sides of the same coin, two sides of the same circle. The downward movement, the pull of gravity through your body, leads to the push up if we give them a chance to do that. We don't give them the chance to do that, then we're in this sort of position of actually struggling. So it's a position of cooperation rather than conflict, I suppose you could say. And this is something that we want to try and sustain all the way through the different movements, which can be quite tricky with some of the movements. So starting off very simply, just turning your head from side to side. And the terms that I was just talking about, we turn in one direction and we begin to recognize where we reach the limit, where that sense of the muscles moving, the muscles pulling and tightening, straining in one way or another, is on the horizon. And before we get to that horizon, we allow the movement in the other direction, because as I turn in one direction, these muscles are extended and then they'll contract and pull me back. So again, this sense of a harmonious relationship, a harmonious dynamic rhythm beginning to work through our body. Hands in front of your shoulders. So as I push up, I feel an extension here and the sides and so on and so forth. And if I go to here, it's tight, but here it's fine. I just allow that movement to contract. So the flow of the movement, which is such a characteristic of Tai Chi, is an outcome of this approach to movement. It's a very powerful movement because it maximizes the value of the body, the extension and contraction of the muscles, without actually interrupting that process with a gripping, tightening thing. Forwards. It also allows for movement, say, as we're doing at the moment in the shoulders, to actually connect to other movements in the body, like for instance with this one, a movement of expansion and then contraction in the chest, in the upper back. Bring your hands down, winding around. Those connections in the body are kind of interrupted by tightness, by stiffness. Think about a traffic system in a town where, you know, if there's a snarl up somewhere, a roundabout or something like that, then everything comes to a halt. Whereas if there's no sort of blockage, shall we call it, traffic will run more smoothly. Bring your hands up and widen them around. These initial exercises help to release some of those blockages, particularly in our joints, which of course is very important. And then back on the way. Rest in your hands. And then just tilt your pelvis forwards. Feel the pressure building up in your legs until they start to push you back. And at the same time, as you go forward, your hips are dropping back. So there's the extension through your back. So A little bit of sort of extension in your legs at this point, which will push your feet into the ground, start to push your shoulders back, your hips dropping back, lengthening through your back, and that lengthening contracts. So you've got all these different factors coming together to help you come to the upright position much more smoothly, as opposed to if I'm here and I tighten up and I stiffen up and I pull up, then I just lose some of that quality of movement. Very different way of using the body. And so we can't overlook the reconditioning that takes place when we do Tai Chi. We don't want to isolate particular muscles and build them up so that they're sort of thick and bulging, because that can tend to block more subtle elements of the postures and movements. Turn just a little bit so that more of your weight goes towards one leg, distinguishing between what we call full and empty. This is something that we'll come back to in the standing part of the session. Weight transfer is a key element in our mobility. Whether we're seated, whether we're standing, our weight can be lively, fluid, or it can be just sort of like turgid and stagnant. We look for that fluidity. Turn the other way. I'm still aware that gravity is pulling me down into my leg here. It helps with the compression of the leg, and then the leg expands and pushes me back up. I go down into my hips, pulled into my hips, and then hips and lower back and buttocks seem to expand, pushing down into the chair, pushing me forward. So we're taking that basic dynamic downwards with the gravity, upwards through the resilience of our body, and giving it direction through the center of the body. And then from the forward position, turn slightly so you move across the other leg, coming back and across. And if you can do this without straining, then notice in your back, your spine, it has this sort of slight fluidity to it. Remember, our skeleton supports our body, but is also supported by it. So long as I'm not stiffening up, not tightening up in big muscle of my back and sides, it allows space for the spine to move just a little bit. And in that reverses the spine move and encourages that flow of movement through my upper body. Change direction. Change the direction is always in the center part. Good. Come back, most of your weight back in your hips, so you're able to just draw foot up, step out, put the heel down, lower the toes, push gently into the floor. This is called planting the foot. Now, a gentle press down is just enough to give you that heightened sense of contact with your foot to the ground. And then on the other side. So your hands drop down, and your hands palm forwards, and then easing forwards, rotating your arms, third fold 6 ways. Really what we're doing here is now beginning to combine these different elements that we've been working with singly so far. Just letting them blend, sinking down through your hips, transfer of your weight, the movements in the upper part of your body. All part of one movement. Next time you come forwards, leaving your hands facing back, pigeon spreads its wings. Just be careful not to let your arms lead the movement. Movement comes from the ground. So your weight moves, your pelvis tilts forwards, that brings your shoulders forwards. And as you settle in the front foot, in the feet, your arms swing through. The feet push you back, settle into your hips. Your arm follows. It's not this followed by this. It's really only as you settle into your feet that your hand swings in front of your shoulders, and as you settle into your hips that your hands swing behind your shoulders. And this is a good exercise for establishing that pattern, because it's the pattern that we want to try and maintain all the way through the different movements. And I think it's very clear here what is actually happening. It's not always that obvious, but those connections are there. Movement is rooted in our feet. It's transmitted through our legs. It's guided and shaped through the center part of the body, expressed in our legs. One more time. And just letting your arms rest out in front here as you come up, so your arms are drawn over, as though you're rolling a ball into your chest. Back expanding, chatting. You come up this time, turning your hands palm in, drawing your elbows apart again, feeling that expansiveness in your chest, and then chest contracts. You open it across your back. Vision space is space. Beginning to appreciate the different stages of the movements, the changes from one movement to another, how these patterns of expansion and contraction vary a little between the stages of the movements, between one movement and another. And for those of you more experienced in this, over a period of time, just noticing more about this, as our attention goes more deeply into our body, and as our intention becomes more finely tuned, guiding the body. So the experience of the movements can change. Only we should change. Now, pushing way. As you get more familiar with the movements and sequence, see to what extent you can sort of imagine the movement, imagine the shape of the movement here. You know, the way the elbows come out and then come in, the way the arm curves up, the sense of pushing against something, pushing away, so that there's a shape in front of you. And this is one of the ways that we use imaging and tension, we use the mind. And with the shape there, just allowing your body to flow into that shape. Now, obviously, that's something that comes, excuse me, something that comes when we're more familiar with the particular movements, and you'll probably find it comes easier with some movements or another. We tend to favor particular movements. But it shows how deeply connected body and mind can be. One more time. And then hands dropping down, fingers into a hollow fist. This time your elbows don't go out. And what we start to get is quite a strong feeling of rotation in our shoulders and across our upper back. And then opening your fingers, turning your hands behind. Turning your hands behind there. Turning a little bit, going easy forwards. Doing the lengthening through your spine into your arms. Swing over to the other side and back. It's polishing the table. The other direction. Using your hips and your waist. Guide the movement in the upper body. Feeling that sort of almost pulsing type quality as your back and your spine in particular stand out and then contract. One more in each direction. Rest for a moment. Just a gentle pressure downwards through your feet and your hips, almost like you're going to stand up, but much gentler than that. Just enough to again continue that feeling of your spine and your back expanding and contracted, like a little kind of wave running up the back and spine, and then draining down again. There's still this feelings, rhythm of expansion and contraction, you may find that the breathing just naturally falls into that pattern. Although if it doesn't, don't sort of feel that you're doing something drastically wrong. Don't force your breathing into a particular pattern. Bring your hands around so you're cradling the ball. Yeah. And as you feel that expansion, that wave, pushing your hands up, pushing the ball up, turn your hands over, hips dropping down into the chair some more, back contracting, shoulders dropping down, pressing your arms down, rooting down, pushing up, expanding, and one more time. And then rotating your hands out. Same idea, but a bit broader across your solar plexus. Wild goose. One more time. Easing forwards so that your hands can drop down now in front of your knees, just brushing your knees lightly. Sit back, push up, decide your elbows, drawing your fingers around in a nice smooth circle. Just parting the clouds. So we come back, sitting into the hips, feeling that lovely sense of opening and expansion right up into our fingertips. And releasing. From this point, don't go forwards, let your arms drop right down to your sides, feel the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders. And with the next sort of push up, feeling of expansion, the shape that you're imagining is on one side of the body. Your intention goes to one side, pushing one arm up, drawing down. This is dragon plucks the stars. You bring your attention, your intention to your belly, then to the other side, and the arm pick up on that movement. Every time, don't forget, each time you change sides, your attention passes through your center. One time. Now, Bring your hands into your center. So this next movement starts and finishes at that actual physical center. First by pushing up and then lowering down and then pushing out. So another idea, another image that we might make use of is that there's like a ball or a balloon in that center part of our body. It's that center part of our body, remember, that's dropping towards the ground. And as our hands come down, the balloon gets compressed. And as it pushes out, the arms are pushed out. But each time that happens, just recognize that the expanding movement isn't just an upwards or an outward movement, but also a downward. So as you expand here, maybe a slight increase in the feeling of pressure in your hips to the chair, between the soles of your feet and the floor. One more round. Extend one foot, rest it on the heel, knees just a little bit bent. Now the pelvis center tilts forwards. Scooping the sea, looking at the sky, hips dropping back, drawing your shoulders and your head and your arms over, and then escape. So we can see in all sorts of ways the huge significance of the center part of the body. And earlier, when I said about the possibility of sort of imagining that shape, it's almost like the place that we project that shape from is here in the center of the body. And then changing. It's time. That expansion from the middle of the body. The intention is to bring your head to go forwards and up a little bit, drawing your spine out, drawing your arms over. The more upward movements is grasping the tiger's ends. So if the energy could have been said to sort of dropping downwards, that last exercise, from that foundation of the center of the body, is now expanding upwards through your back. One more time. Changing over. So we can choose which way we want the energy to move us. We've got that basic dynamic between gravity and the resilience of our body. We've got potential for the weight to move as one of the outcomes of that downward and upward movement. And then there's a multitude of shapes and patterns that we can begin to visualize. And that movement, that energy will move our bodies through those shapes. And then grasping the tiger's ends. One more time. So, repeating. And going back to this movement, the rolling of the center of your center, turn in there going forwards, turning back the other way, and back. So when I turn in this direction, that's to your right, this left shoulder gets pushed forwards. When I turn the other way, it's the right shoulder that gets pushed forward. This is a bit exaggerated. Straight around. So I'm actually going too far here, but see if you can build those connections. Now again, we're going to use this movement. Turn to your left, raise your left hand, go forwards. As you turn, left shoulder pushes the left elbow forwards. And then on the other side. Like a kind of one-sided version of the earlier exercise. Polishing the table. And then coming so that your hand crosses the center line of the body and then. The rest of these, this is stirring the beans. The main independent movement with your arms, hands, is here, an extension through the left, a contraction through the right, and then the other way around. If I were to stop doing that, then my hands are still moving in the pattern. It's just not as big a pattern. But instead, what we do is we alternate from side to side. This is the exercise bear play. Sorry, no, it's not. It's the exercise stirring the beans. For comparison with bear play, those of you who know bear play, there's a similar kind of dynamic in the background, a bit simpler this one. Nice and smooth. And then just come back to the feeling of equilibrium, focusing on that once again, is one that we want to carry into the standing position. So before we do that, just preparing to stand, rubbing your hands together again and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. Onto the upper part of the chest. Your belly. And your face. Get the legs moving again, pushing your heels up. And push them up and begin to circle your knees around. So feeling the movement back in your hips. And back. Okay. And then standing. So once again, looking for that sense of equilibrium. So we need a posture that allows that, posture that feels supported. And standing with your feet directly below your hips, not too narrow a stance. You want your weight slightly forwards, just like in the chair. And then once again, the hips drop back, yielding to the pull of gravity, bringing down so that the downward movement, the pull of gravity, is neutralized by the upward movement from the ground and then let your hips drop back a little bit more and pushing up. Sort of exploring and developing, cultivating this sense of central equilibrium. All the qualities that go with that, the sense of harmony in the movement, the calmness, the stillness of the mind. That's quite a tricky process. Bringing your hands around into the standing version of rooting down. Push up. And then your hands turn. Feel the pull of gravity on your hips. Allow them to sink down. That draws your shoulders down. That draws your hands. And you push up, hips go up, shoulders go up, hands follow. Just be aware that very easy for your arms and your hands to take over. And change into the wild goose. And parting. Okay. Come on, foot out. Step forward with the other foot, keeping the width of your step. Let your weight drop back into your rear foot. Feel that sense of compression. Just be careful with your knees. As you feel the push up, again, the intention is for it to go forwards. Settling into your front, and that same energy, rising energies, is basically converted into a horizontal move. So gravity pulling downward is the movement, the energy that can actually begin to move you forwards and backwards. You've got to have the posture that allows. Go into your back foot and very gently raise the front toes. Just be aware if you're doing this, pulling your shoulders back. Now ask yourself why, just to raise your toes, you're leaning backwards. There should be no need for it. Go forwards, push your back knee forwards, and your heel comes up. And if your back knee goes forwards, your hip will drop. But notice again whether you're leaning forwards to do that. These are old habits that we have. And we need to make a deliberate, conscious intention not to do them. There are times when they're useful, but this isn't one of them. Stepping in. Then the other foot forwards. So the yielding to the pull of gravity can actually deliver an energy to move with. There may be times when we do angle forwards, a little bit more momentum. But just bear in mind that when we do that, the center of gravity is now out there somewhere. And provided we can bring our legs through, well and good, we're not going to fall over. But it's important to realize that we can only go so far with that. Even if we are leaning forwards, we still need that balancing effect of our hips dropping back. And if we allow that to happen, we're both releasing the strain of fighting against gravity, because gravity is pulling your hips down. We're also bringing into play a mechanism that helps to counterbalance the tendency to sort of fall forwards or backwards or sideways. And raising the toes and the heel. It's counterintuitive because effectively we're becoming more stable and we're getting more movement, not by bunching up the muscles and straining, but actually by doing the opposite, yielding. Stepping in. And steps through. So taking a few steps forwards. Remember that feeling of planting your foot in your chair. Maybe you can get some of that, gently pressing the foot into the floor. Making sure of that contact with the ground. And then going back. And shift. Have your right foot forwards. In the standing version of fisherman castanet, starting in your back foot, your weight goes forward, your arms are hanging behind, and then they swing through as you settle into the hand. And what we have here is a very straightforward movement, literally straightforwards. Great for feeling this progression of movement from the ground, ending in our arms and our fingers. The weight's moving forwards and backwards. You're facing forwards, your center's facing forwards, and your arms are swinging forwards and backwards. A very straightforward formula and a lovely exercise, and a really interesting exercise to feel those connections in the body. But now, hands palm down, come back, turn to your left as you go back, and then going forwards, turn back to the front, Bringing your arms around, your arms gently extending and contracting. And standing version of stirring the beans. I nearly call it polishing the table again. Very similar to polishing the table. Using the way you're using your hips and waist. If I turn round, then you can see from here, moving, see the turn. I'm exaggerating that a little bit. Don't overdo the arms. 80% of the movement really should be the weight transfer and the turning of the body. Okay, now left foot forwards, starting with fisherman cast and net. And then changing to stirring the beans. And the principal element in that change is turning in the center of your bodies. Just a slight change in your arms, but changing the arms is meaningless without change in the center of the body. And this time, when you come forwards, turning slightly to the front, but then turn to your right, and this time let your arms swing up and down, a bit like the wild goose, but you're sinking down here. Raise the back heel, bring your foot in, hips dropping back, step forwards, planting the foot. As you drop your hands down, go forwards, do the same thing again. This is dragonfly skims the water. Now, what you may find is that when you get to here, with your hips dropping back, you're able to comfortably raise the leg. If you struggle with that, if you find that you're beginning to sort of like wobble around too much, don't force the movement. You can just as easily leave your toes down, but it might be worth just investigating whether in raising the leg, you're once again maybe tilting the shoulders back or something like that. And just consider that this movement here is just a rotation in your hip joint. And ask yourself again, why, if you're simply rotating in your hip joint, are you pulling your shoulders back? And then this time, bringing the feet down. Go back to your chair. A suggestion, if you want to build that particular movement, or you just want to investigate this idea of raising the leg up, what we often do when we're walking or running is we swing the whole body, we swing the arms and everything, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all we ever do, then we can only ever move our leg by swinging our arms and our shoulders. And that may be what's happening. It may be that you're going to lift the leg and you're doing this. And because we're going slowly, you fall over. So holding on to something, chair or wall or something like that, and just begin to sort of investigate what's happening when you rotate this. Now you may find it quite difficult because quite often the area around here can get quite weak, particularly the tendons and the ligaments. So you have to build this up. But if you think about it, this is, as I said, this is a rotation in the hip joint. Why would you want the pelvis to move if you're rotating in the hip joint? It was like trying to open a door and the door frame is loose. The door will stick. So this can really help to improve the general mobility of your hip. And eventually you can do this and you can see my pelvis is level. If my pelvis tilts slightly, that's when I start to lose that sense of equilibrium. When we apply that to the stepping that we do in Tai Chi, or movements like dragonfly skims the water that we just did, then we begin to realize that there's often an element missing from our everyday walking. And it's this sense of being able to maintain central equilibrium and those qualities of central equilibrium while we're doing something like leaning forwards or backwards. And once we lose central equilibrium, we really compromise our stability and our mobility. So if you think about movements like going back to the seated exercise, like stirring the beats, we angle forwards, but we still want to feel that quality of central equilibrium. And when we come back to sitting, then in the first instance, we had central equilibrium as a result of the harmony, if you like to think like that, between the tendency for gravity to pull us forwards, pull our shoulders forwards. So this is sort of collapsing movement forwards, and the other side of the body, gravity pulling our hips back. Remember, we get held in this position. And then with practice, we can begin to, we can be held in this position too by releasing more in the hips. If I go further forwards and don't release in the hips, I start to stumble out of the chair. And the same thing standing. I can stand here and I can maybe do this. I can let my hips drop back and it's fine. I can do the washing up or whatever I'm having to do. Or I can use this to project my center of gravity forwards, knowing that if I need to, I can neutralize that by dropping my hips back, whatever the circumstances require. But if I'm like this and I'm stiffening my hips and I do this, I'm instantly falling forwards. So central equilibrium and the yielding to the pull of gravity that helps to create central equilibrium really are essential for our stability, amongst other things. And it's the energy flow and so on and so forth. So coming back to the seated position and embrace tiger, return to mountain, we push out and then hips sink, shoulders sink, hands are drawing in, coming back to central equilibrium. And for me, the image of the mountain combines many of these qualities, the root, the strength that comes through that, stability, but also the very dynamic quality, the spaciousness and the sense of energy that the image of the mountain may convey. They're all elements within central equilibrium. Learning what we need to do to come back to that is a really important element. It's a really important thing that we learn in Tai Chi. What brings you back? and then come into the. Lovely. Thanks very much for watching and joining in, and hope that was useful to you. Enjoy the rest of your day.